Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for our 30 on Thursday webinar series where we will be talking about SharePoint PM tips, start with a task, end with a project. If this is your first time joining us, our 30 on Thursday webinar series is a bi-weekly 30-minute series where we talk all things enterprise content management. Our next webinar will be on June 18th, where we will be talking about maximizing SharePoint and Office 365 for workflow and forms. You can register for that webinar and view our full schedule of all of our webinars at sharepoint.protiviti.com/webinars. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about SharePoint project management, we are hosting the SharePoint Project Management Symposium on June 15th in Reston, Virginia. Registration is only $99. You have access to 4 sessions and 1 PM roundtable. We have 4 PMP speakers, including Nora, who will be presenting today. We have 1 MVP speakers, and PMPs can earn 7 PDUs at this event. If you're interested in learning more or registering, you can visit our website sharepoint.protiviti.com/PM Symposium. We are doing some live tweeting during today's presentation. You can tweet us your questions and feedback during the webinar. Tweet at ProtivitiSP and use the hashtag 30TPMTips. Today's session is being recorded. You can access the recording of this session and the archive of all of our past sessions on our website. For questions today, please save all the questions until the end. You can insert them in the question window anytime during the presentation, or you can tweet us your questions again at ProtivitiSP using the hashtag 30TPMTips. Today's topic again is SharePoint PM tips, start with a task, end with a project. Our presenter today is Nora Broeck with Protiviti, and I am Julia Marple, and I will be moderating today's session. Okay, let's get started. Nora, I'm going to hand over presenter.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I can see your screen looks good.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nora Broeck. A little bit about me. I am PMI certified with a project management specialty. I'm also certified with our Microsoft Office specialist for SharePoint 2013. A little personally about me, I'm a proud Irish American. And the photos you'll see on the screen are several things that I've climbed this year, being the Willis Tower, the Aon Center, the Hancock Building, and Crowpatrick in County Mayo, Ireland. Let's get started. Let's talk about SharePoint a little bit. So if you own Windows Server, you already own a free version of SharePoint Foundation. So that's the good news. And IT loves it when you work with what you own rather than buying additional tools. And SharePoint exists in on-premises, so they call that on-prem, and within Office 365, or better known as the cloud. And SharePoint has great scalability. You can use it a little or a lot. SharePoint is a collaborative platform for both internal and external users. We all have project management dilemmas. Project plan, do you have one? Who can see it? Microsoft Project, who really knows how to use it? Microsoft Project, who loves it? Not everyone necessarily. And a project plan, not everyone should edit it. And we all know there's so much email. And so you need simple ways to manage meeting multiple skill sets of all of your users. So what is a project, essentially? At a basic level, a project is a collection of tasks leading to deliverables with due dates and resource assignments. I make it sound a little bit more simple. We can start simple by adopting a task list. So your prerequisites for success here are having SharePoint 2013, a SharePoint project site, permissions to create sites, and your willingness to love the task list. So let's start with a SharePoint project site. And so this is a SharePoint 2013 site collection with an on-premises deployment. So essentially, I'm going to walk you through a series of steps to set up a project site. So first, you navigate to the upper right-hand corner of the screen in SharePoint where you see your name and the small gear. Select your site contents from there. From there, select Subsites and New Subsite. And then your dialog box will appear for the title and description of your new project site. So this is going to be called Task Project with the website address. Moving forward, this is a very efficient part for you, that SharePoint offers you a project site template. So you're just selecting that template from the choices that you have. Next, you're going to select the user permissions. You can use the same permissions as the parent site. So whatever site this is living below, you can say inherit those permissions, or you can say use unique permissions, because you can make unique permissions just for your project team. And then finally, choose your navigation settings and select Create. Then Presto, you have your project site. So what you can see is that you have instant options on the left-hand navigation of a notebook, a document library, a task list, and a calendar, and your ability to navigate to site contents. And so really what this is enticing us to do right away is to work with the project summary as it's drawing attention to get organized, telling us to edit the task list. So I'm going to go ahead and make that selection, and I'm going to select the blue Edit button to edit the task list. First thing that I'll do is navigate you to within the task list. So you can see on the left-hand navigation, it's a little bit grayer, so that's a visual cue to you for where you are in your site. And it's also flipped you right into edit mode. So if you're not quite ready to edit, I recommend that we go back to the top level of this site and look at this another way. I've gone back to the top, and I'm just going to select tasks from my left-hand navigation. And the difference between the last time and this time is that when I enter the task list, I'm not entering the task list immediately in edit mode. I'm being invited to create a new task or edit this list. So my choice is to set up a new task because I want to look at a task in more detail. Here is the anatomy of a task. This is essentially what you get out of the box from SharePoint. You get a task name, a start date, a due date, and assigned to. So notice the small asterisk next to task name that is required. So anything that you see with a small asterisk like that has to be filled out or you won't be able to save your list item. Your assignments too, they're going to be selected from your users that are housed in your Active Directory. So you can go ahead and look people up, just as you would look someone up for sending them an email. But then notice in the lower left-hand corner, there's another indication that says Show More. And there's more. Now what you get is the ability to enter a text description, so notice that's multiple lines. You can select predecessors to organize your tasks. You can select the priority of the task and the task status. And so this is a little richer contextually. And notice none of these things are required to fill out. They're optional if you want to use them. So let's fill one out. My task roughly is named Task 1. It's got a start and a due date. It's assigned to me, lucky me, 0% complete. It's got a description of what I need to do, no predecessors, of course it's high priority, and I haven't started. And so when I save this item, the view that's available on my task list shows my task name, my due date, and my assigned to. So not bad. It gives you the basic information, but it actually could be better. We can make some minor adjustments. So a task list is a list, and lists have the ability to have views. So if we enter as a step 1 the ribbon up at the top left-hand side of your task list, select List, and then Manage Views, followed by Modify View. So if you see Modify View up in the center of the lower box. And so immediately, when we modify our view, I get 27 instant options to enrich my view. So essentially, I just need to select the ones that I want to display. You can see the display checkbox and the position from the left. I can rearrange anything that I want that's here. So I can add new items to display, I can remove items from display, and I can reorder them. It's fairly simple and it's very quick. So this is more like it. The top shows where I started, my basic task list out of the box. That's my view with my task name, my due date, and assigned to. And then I've added a little bit more richness for myself with task name, start date, due date, assigned to, percent complete, description, priority, and related items. So before and after, with just 30 seconds worth of tweaking, I have a richer view than I did before. But let's say you need more. You can even customize your task list further. So essentially, we're going to go up to our list settings again. So the first step is to navigate up to the list ribbon. Second is to select list settings, and then navigate until you find columns. And then way down on the column list, you have the ability to create a column. I want to add two things to my task list. I want to be able to identify work streams, and I want to be able to identify deliverables. So what I've done in each of these cases is I've selected the name and the type. So the first step is to name the column. So you can see that I've named the column Workstream. I can select the type. In this case, I just want a single line of text. Down at the bottom, I just want to confirm that I want to add this to the default view. And so the default view is what you see automatically when you go to your task list. But then I'm going to select OK. So I've done this with two items. I've done it with work streams and deliverables. So I have a richer experience right away. You can see from my default view over to the right, you can now see workstream and deliverable. If it had been populated when I filled out the task, you'd see the text there. And then you can see on my task form, way at the bottom, that I have a box for workstream and deliverable. Again, I haven't made it required. I could have if I chose to, but at this point in time, I simply wanted to add that information. So this is what you get to do with it. This is your populated task list. So you can see now we've got a sample of 10 tasks that are in this list. We can see the start date, the due date, the assigned to, the percent complete, the description, the priority, work stream, and deliverable. So as a project manager or project team member, I can at a glance say, these are the items that are in front of us. These are when they're due from a very visual perspective. So this is essentially what the populated task looks like in action. So what can you do with this? I say filter it. So if I'm team member Claire and I'm not really interested in like other people's tasks, I just want to know what I have to do, I can select the filter on assigned to and just select myself, and then I can see that I have 3 upcoming tasks. I own tasks 2, 8, and 10. So as a manager, I can also look for my resources and filter on my resources to see what tasks that they have. I can filter by date. So again, this is Claire's work. So she can filter by date to say what's been assigned to me, and is it in conflict with anything else that I'm working on, and what do I need to prioritize. You can filter by work stream. So there was 10 tasks on that list, only 2 of them being infrastructure. So if I want a quick view of what is an infrastructure task, I simply select the work stream and select infrastructure to filter that, and then it is immediately shown. So you can see that the filter is on. Next to the word work stream, there's a tiny filter icon. You can also clear filters from work streams as well. Let's talk about the timeline. Sometimes looking at a list of tasks, it's good for some people, but other people need a picture. And so what SharePoint 2013 does with the task list is also leverages a timeline. This comes as an out-of-box feature in the project site. So essentially, if we look closely at task number 1, we'll see that there's the ellipses there. That's the 3 dots. And so if I select the ellipses, like the pop-up window about my task, task number 1, and one of the options that I have with task number 1 is to add to timeline. So simply, all I need to do is just click that button, add to timeline. You can see that up towards the right of my slide, this task number 1 has now appeared in the timeline. So we have task number 1, June 5th or June 10th. So essentially, I can make this a little richer experience. Once my task is in the timeline, I must click within the timeline, and I get a new ribbon piece that pops up. So notice before we had browse, tasks, and list, but once you click within the timeline options pop up. So I'm in the timeline. I'm going to select font and then the color that I want. So I'm going to change the color of my task 1 from blue to green. So blue on the top as the as is right out of the box, and then my personal customization has made that green. So I just have the options to add more detail such as color. I also have additional options with my timeline format. So in the top option, I am displaying my timeline piece as they call it, display as a bar. And the bottom I'm displaying as a callout. So you could create milestone tasks for yourself and make those callouts while keeping all of your regular tasks, for example, as bar tasks. So again, it's really up to you with what your preference are or what draws the most visual attention to your project team members. You can also drill down a little bit more on the timeline detail. So again, we're clicking within the timeline ribbon shows up, and then I'm going to select show and hide. And the options that show up for me are task dates, today, start and finish, time scale, and date format. So just looking at a couple of these, if I have task date selected, within my task, underneath task 2, for example, you see the dates 6/10 through 6/16. And then without that checked, task 2 just simply becomes task 2 there on the timeline. I have start and finish. So if you notice, if start and finish is selected, you'll have start date at the front of your timeline and finish date at the end of your timeline. If you uncheck that, that information isn't there. So for people with their eye on the big picture, start and finish dates are important. So that's an option that you can show or not show. There's a today function that shows you what day today is. So you can always call out attention to where you are with a particular task against today's date. So here's your option for the polished timeline, as I call it. We're using today. You can see that up on the upper left-hand side. I have colored my work streams. So I have infrastructure as more fuchsia, and all of my migration tasks are green. And I have my project start and end dates. So let's move forward and talk about task lists and Microsoft Project. So essentially, they're closer friends than you know. Each is a container for descriptive task information. Each natively has start and due dates, assignments, percent complete, predecessors, priority, and work status. They work together to sync a project plan with a SharePoint 2013 task list. So let's say start simple. Use a Microsoft project. So your prerequisites for success, you need SharePoint 2013. You need permissions to create sites. You need a SharePoint project site. You need Microsoft Project Professional 2013. This is very important. You need that specific version. And you need basic Microsoft project skills. We're going to start with a project plan, similar to a lot of folks, I'm sure. Again, we have 10 tasks that are in this plan. We have key dates, and we have resources that are assigned. And you'll also notice that timeline resembles the timeline that you're seeing in SharePoint. The first thing that I can do is save and sync my Microsoft project plan. So for the purpose of this conversation, my Microsoft project plan is resident on my local PC. And what I want to do is to save it and sync it with a SharePoint task list. So I'm going to go to my menu options within Project and say Save As, and I'm going to select Sync with SharePoint. And then this is going to ask me a series of questions. So I want to sync with either a new SharePoint site or an existing SharePoint site. I need to have that site address and the task list. So for today, I am going to sync with an existing SharePoint site. I have pre-populated my site address in here. A quick tip for you is just to go to your browser and cut and paste the address, and you just need to the top level of your site. So for example, if it's your site collection / project name, just take it to that level. You don't need to take it to the list level exactly. Once you verify your site, basically this process is going to ping that site, and then it's going to bring back the task list options that you have to choose from. Once you select your task list, you just go ahead and click Save, and then you'll see the gray dialog box start off to the right. So what we get is an instant project summary in SharePoint. So you can see that your project plan is now integrated within the SharePoint site, and it's telling you right off that task 1 is due in 5 days. And so that's that big picture summary that was on the landing page of our project site. So now if I go down one level deeper, so if I just assume that I select tasks in the left-hand navigation, I can now see the tasks that were housed in my project plan on my desktop have now been synced with this site, and they're resident in this task list. So the things that natively out of the box line up for you are task name, start date, finish or due date, percent complete, resource name, and predecessors. So all of these things sync between project and the task list by default. For example, one item I've seen is a little bit problematic is spelling on assigned to. So if you make a spelling error in assigned to in your project plan and then you try and sync with your project site, it's looking through Active Directory to come up with, I'll just use myself as an example. There's a little space in my name, so if you push it together, it might not necessarily find me. So you could initially sync a plan and have like a blank assigned to resource come up. And so that's just something you need to be mindful of, is making sure that you've got resource names exactly spelled out. So let's look at how we can work with this. I'm going to say make a change in your plan file. So this is my plan file on my desktop. What I like to do is change this task assignment for myself to Brittany. So I'm going to go ahead and make that change. You can see that in the upper right-hand corner that the resource is now Brittany. I'm going to go back to my save and sync. So you'll notice my dialog is a little bit different now. I've got this sample sync that's here. And essentially, I just need to push the save button. And then you can see that the updates are made to the task list within the SharePoint site. And so now Brittany is the owner of task number 1 instead of myself. So likewise, I can also make a change in the task list within SharePoint. So number 2, that task used to belong to Brittany, but now it's going to go to Melvin. So I'm going to go ahead and update my task in the task list and save it. I'm going to repeat my save and sync process to my project plan. And then you can see that Melvin is now the owner of task number 2. So those updates are made back to my project plan on my desktop. Good thing to remember are that task lists are friendly, powerful, and they're visual. I would say they're very, very user-friendly, especially for people that are a bit intimidated by Microsoft Project. So it's a good way for people to get thinking about organizing themselves in a way that is compatible with Microsoft Project. Again, task lists in Microsoft Project for SharePoint 2013 are compatible. And you can select your own level of organizational project management maturity to figure out a starting point. You know, are you ready to work with task lists, or are you ready to work with Microsoft Project? Could it be a little bit of combination of both? That option is up to you. All right, well, that includes my 30 on Thursday. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we have some questions. So first, is there a maximum number of tasks you can have?
Let's see. For syncing a Microsoft project plan, the recommendation from Microsoft is not to exceed 750 tasks for best performance.
Okay, and can you give external access to people?
You can, as long as your site is set up with FBA, which is forms-based authentication. You can add external users to your site and they can view. For example, if you're working with external consultants on your project and they need visibility to the project plan, they need visibility or the ability to collaborate on documents, you can add them as long as your site has been configured that way, your site collection has been configured that way. So that is a discussion to take up with your IT department and security policies as well.
Okay, great. What about SharePoint 2013 as a portfolio management system? Is it better to run through project and have SharePoint 2013 as a project management level for an actual PM's working projects?
Yes, that's a good question. So what I think you're asking is the extent of projects that you can manage through SharePoint 2013. So if you could chat back if I've interpreted that correctly.
Yes.
Okay, great. So yes, you can use SharePoint 2013 to manage a portfolio of projects. You can create project sites for individual projects and then roll up some of that project information that you want to see at a higher level. Not knowing the size of your enterprise, I would say please contact me with that information. Perhaps we could make a recommendation for you. But we can have individual project teams managing their projects at a site level, and you can roll up that information at a site collection level to give others a viewpoint into projects that are occurring within the enterprise.
Okay, great. Another question we got, how do you reorder your task form after you've added new task columns or changed order, such that your task form matched your task list?
Great. So we're looking at the display of the task list. So essentially, you modify the view. So if you recall, when I modified the view on the task form, when I added the new items, essentially I selected which items I was going to display and then the order of which I was going to display that. So for example, if I had wanted to put workstream or deliverable at the top, when those were created, I could have selected workstream as number 1 and deliverable as number 2. So essentially, if you have a column in your task list, you can reorder those columns as any way you see fit. That first example that we had 27 items. So anything that you add to that, you're able to reposition in a way that's more intuitive for you.
Okay, great. One more question. What are major functionality losses from Microsoft Project to SharePoint 2013, the differences?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a large question. In terms of basic matching, we've gone over the field mapping that is out of the box that matches with Microsoft Project and SharePoint. I have seen that you need to do, if you have very complex project plans, so this is, again, your Microsoft Project plan on your desktop. So if you have added a lot of complexity to your Microsoft project plan, you may need to do some experimentation with your project site to make sure that things sync and map the way that you want to have them displayed.
Okay, great. All right, that is all the questions we have today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Nora, for presenting. We will be placing the recording of today's presentation on our website, sharepoint.protiviti.com. We appreciate everyone attending today, and we hope you have a great day. Thank you, Nora.
Thank you, Julia.